The customers are the current people who are patronizing. When you go to them, you ask them, what can I do for you? They're going to ask you to give them more value for less money.
The current system we have in place, and I think we should ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Our current education system, something we want to unlearn.
Start at the end, not at the beginning. In other words, begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And the end has to be value for your non-customers. Don't look at what's happening now, where the best things are. Look at where things can become better and greater for others not being served.
Hi, and welcome to the Unlearn Show, the show where we undefine, unlimit, rethink, and unlearn. Customer. Who is your non-customer? How do you define that?
Well, Jamie, let me just step back a bit. Just to say, in the whole blue ocean shift approach, there are 3 steps that are important to create a blue ocean shift. The first is you have to create a blue ocean perspective. So it's about a mindset shift. Because traditional strategic planning tells us that we need to go to our customers to find out what is happening. But that does not give you the picture of the total demand. The total demand are not just the people in your industry, but are the first-tier non-customers. These are the people who use your products or service just because they have to. And a better alternative comes and they hop off your boat. Then there's a second tier of non-customer, which are the people who are refusing to use your products. They probably have tried your product already.
Right.
Or decide that your product does not make sense for them. For example, most of the businesses, largest percent of businesses are made of small businesses. And they did not find the credit card system very attractive.
Right.
Because it comes with a high fee for using it. And they were unable to negotiate any special rates because of their small volumes. But when other payment option came along, Square was one of them who came along and allow you to use your digital wallet to pay each other. And that created an opportunity for them. So they only use the credit card system because they had to. So the first tier, which they were refusing, only use because they have to. The second tier, they refuse to use your system. For example, if you're selling tiles and somebody chooses to go wooden floor, they may have thought. And then the third tier, which is the largest part of the market, are the unexplored. So the real story to find out where you are and to deepen your business lies with your non-customers, not your customer. The customers are the current people who are patronizing. When you go to them, you ask them, what can I do for you? They're going to ask you to give them more value for less money.
Right. That's interesting, right? So let's kind of differentiate between the two. Your customers are the persons who you're currently engaged with. They're currently the ones using your product, right? Then we move into the different tiers of the non-customer. Traditionally, we focus all our effort on our customers. And like you said, right, customers, when you go to them, what do they ask? More for less.
Yes.
Right? Now, that's a typical story for your customers. But your non-customers, how do you identify the first tier of non-customer? Only that tier. Let's double click on that tier first. How do you think about them?
All right. Your first tier are people who may see your offering as an alternative to something else. And maybe they choose your offering only a few times when they can't do better. So those are people who use your service and are looking out for the next available opportunity. And I use the example of the credit card. A small size business having to pay such a high fee for the credit card service that they only engage them because they had no other option. But for example, when Square allow you to use a digital wallet came in first, they jumped to that. So they were only supporting a business until better came along.
Right.
So,
I mean, if you are, for example, a doctor's office, right? The people who come to your office from that community or that area because they were either assigned to it, or
Yes.
the next office is too far away and it's
Yes.
way too much trouble. So they come to Dr. Jones because Dr. Jones is the only office in the vicinity, in the area, or they were assigned to it by the system.
Yes.
They are your first tier customers.
Yes.
Now, this means that if Dr. Lee shows up in the same community
Yeah.
with a better service, they will quickly shift to Dr. Lee.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So those are your first tier customers. Now, how can you sort of get those customers closer if you are a business? What can you do to protect them?
All right. Well, the first thing you have to do, you start with the value that you're offering. Because you need to look at what value am I offering. Let me use the example of that's using the Blue Ocean Shift is the Cirque du Soleil. And you've been there recently, Jamie, to one of their performances. What they did at the time in the 80s, when human rights, animal rights were rising and people were against animals being used in that way. And an expensive venture to be going across another part of the world and traveling with a whale and an elephant. It was such and then you have to have star performers. It was just so much for the circus. So what Cirque du Soleil did, they stepped back. What they did, they said, how can I reduce the things that I'm doing now that are not really bringing value to the customers? That is, they saw getting rid of the animals. So what they did, they look across industry. They look across the what you call it now, the theater industry. And they start to use a storyline. Let's change the circus and put an air-conditioned building. Let's shift with a theme. And what they did, they start to attract non-customers because the circus is directed more or less at the children. But they start to get singles coming. They start to get people who they were drawn from both industry, from the theater as well as from the circus. So they were able to shift people who are non-customers who probably only went to a circus because that was the only thing available that weekend in town. Where they are. So, that is how, yes.
That's quite interesting. And we want to put it into perspective, right? The topic for today is identifying, locating, planning, addressing, researching, sort of defining or undefining your non-customers, right? We want to remove all the limitations, rethink the idea of customers and non-customers. So the first one is your non-customers is what matters. That's where you start. The second one is let's change the perspective, as you mentioned, Fritz, earlier. It's a mindset shift that has to go on. Now we are coming to defining the different tiers. We have 3 tiers of non-customers. And the first one is the ones who are closest to you, right? Now, so far we are at the mindset aspect of it, right? And we're learning to identify the first tier. How do we identify the second tier of non-customers?
All right, there you go again. The second tier of non-customers are people who look at the alternative in your industry and don't choose you because another one may be offering them a better value. For example, let's go back. I'm into flooring. I sell tiles, but somebody choose to use carpet. So they see carpet as an alternative to what you have and refuse to use tiles, maybe because of the service or maybe what you're offering them, the value is not sufficient to keep them. So that's the second tier, which has to do those who are refusing to use a service. They would have considered it, but choose against it. So it goes back to the value that you're offering. Are you just competing with somebody else? Because remember, the blue ocean is not about competing. It's about creating uncontested market space. And that's the difference. If you want to look alike, you want to imitate. You don't imitate. You innovate. You create. And this is what it's about. The second tier of non-customers are very important because these are the people who are looking at an alternative to what you're offering, right? But butter and margarine, you pick your choice. But is it I'm able to offer more value that I can make what normally would have been my competitor irrelevant?
Interesting. I think we with these customers and non-customers, the different tiers, I think it's important to manage the expectations of your non-customers. That's essentially how you manage the first tier. What they expect is that you are going to give them something that if they could get somewhere else, they will quickly do it. So we manage the expectations of the non-customers.
Yes.
The third tier, that's I believe is the most dynamic tier. It's the largest group for most market space. How do you define the third tier of non-customers?
Right. Your third tier, you're unexplored. People you never thought were in your industry. And I use an actual example, Jamie. When I was managing the Caribbean Maritime University,
right?
When I look at the education sector, it was a production line. Coming out of the high schools, I was deeply concerned that there were 50,000 people who would matriculate into the high schools, but only, let's say, 5% made it to fulfill the requirement to enter university. So the education system was a production line, producing people for universities, but not producing people for the marketplace. Then I asked the question, what happened to the other 95% that people ignored? Those are the non-customers, and I decided to focus on them. So what I did was create a faculty and call it the Faculty of Advanced Skills. This was a faculty in which you meet people where they are. You offer what you call support courses that would bring them up to a level, that would help them to matriculate, not just into the traditional program, but to prepare them for the marketplace, because not everybody wanted to necessarily, when you graduate with a degree, what does it say? What they wanted to do was to gain skills and competence that would make them employable. Because there were two challenges with the workforce. One, as I said, is a mindset problem, and the next is a skill set problem. But the greatest hindrance was not in the skill set, it was in the mindset.
Right.
So the whole idea was to shift the mindset so you can impact the skill set. I don't know if I'm coming through.
No.
So there was a bigger market that was ignored by everyone.
That's very interesting. Very interesting concept. I mean, I find that the high school matriculation process for university is a very poor determinant of who will be able to perform in the marketplace.
Yes.
It's very obvious, right? Only about 10% matriculate. So that cannot be. That's more of a filtering system to those who are fortunate, to those who had the ability to prepare, to those who lived in better homes. It's filtering out into different class of society, right? That's what that system is. The current system we have in place, and I think we should ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Our current education system, something we want to unlearn, is more of a filtering system for societal norms than a system designed to best suit the marketplace. How do you think about that? I mean, how do you kind of think, how do you think we should change, and what are the adjustments you think we should make?
Very good, Jamie. And it has to do with the angle from which we approach education. We are still teaching knowledge because universities back in the days were created to actually provide knowledge for people, because knowledge was limited. You had to go to seek it. But today we have a plethora of platforms, Google, YouTube, all these platforms where knowledge are there in abundance. Yet we are still going to school to gain knowledge. We have to shift that. So it's about moving the needle You don't look at where in other words, where your start was in the schools. But where we need to start now is the workplace. Let's work backwards from the workplace. So you start to unravel the skills that are needed. When you go to the workplace and look where the needs are, then you work backwards to create the training program. So the whole approach from which you do, and that's a perspective that change. So in other words, you can start with anybody, including the so-called non-customers, those who do not meet the matriculation requirement.
Yeah.
How can you create a new formula, new approach for them?
I think also it's quite interesting that we have no space for failure, and the way how we approach failing an exam, examinations and papers and multiple choices and writing papers and failing and grading or grading system. I think it's quite interesting how the pressure we put on our minds for failing and the fear of failing. I think, and I believe generally that we should shift more to a competence-based system in a lot more of our disciplines than, for example, qualifications.
No, you're correct, because what is happening, our education system is still stuck in the first industrial revolution, where steam engines were created, and we now need people to staff the factories. So what happened, the number of people that were needed, they created a production line. Look at the school system. When you go from the primary system, well, in the English education system, a bell, you ring the bell to move people from one class to another. So it's like a batch. It's a batch training. Right. There's no space for creativity. In fact, you're taught there is only one right answer, and it's in the back of the book. So you're taught to lay aside your creativity and work with the system, because you get promoted by batches. It's a batch process.
It's a strong conditioning. It's strong conditioning.
Yes.
Yeah, Pavlov proved that, right? It's you ring the bell and I mean, if the example, and we want to mention Pavlov because he kind of did experiments where he gave dogs food at a particular time, and every time he'll feed the dog, he'll ring the bell. Every time he feed the dog, he ring the bell. And after a while, he removed the food and just rang the bell. And the dog felt the urge to eat and started saliva start running from the mouth because the body was trained. Operative conditioning. That's sort of what we are faced with now in our education system.
Yes. Can you not train to think? In fact, it goes contrary, because the skills that are needed now by the workplace are the very thing that the education system goes against. Because if I'm in an exam and I decide to collaborate with my friends, work together, then they say I'm cheating, it'll put me out of the exam. So I am celebrated to work alone.
Right.
But if I'm in the workplace, I can do a lot of things by myself, but the workplace now demand that you work in teams, you collaborate, which is the very thing they would have failed you for in the exam. So the skills that are needed are not on the curriculum.
I am proposing that a fourth shift is on us in terms of education. And I'm curious to hear what you want to how you think about this. I am proposing that fourth shift that is on us now is the movement that is being caused by AI.
Yes.
And artificial intelligence and that whole robotics industry. Now, if it is that we were needed to collaborate and work together and sort of build teams and all that stuff, sort of where we are now, or where we think we are now, but we're not qualified for, I am going to argue that knowledge will become redundant completely. What will make the difference in the future and in the immediate future is your ability to ask questions. Because everybody will know the answer to everything. The difference would be who asked the better questions.
And you're correct. Because the current education system, Jamie, teach you to spot the answers. But where we are now, as you said in the fourth shift, is not about the answers, about the questions. Because the answers are easy. You can go to 𝗏𝗡.
Right.
Say, write an essay for me.
Exactly. So it is then 𝗏𝗡. I use it a lot. I find it very interesting. I like to play around with it. But what I use it for is to kind of refine my questioning and my ability to ask the right questions. Sometimes, all right, let me ask you this then. What are great questions? How would you define great questions?
Well, great questions are questions that do not lead to multiple choice.
Interesting way of framing it. I mean, it's I have a very similar answer. Great questions are questions that lead to more questions.
That's correct.
But not a defined answer, but more questions that open your perspective. A great question should act as a shift in perspective.
That's correct. Because the current system, we're trained to ask questions that lead to an answer. But you should ask questions that lead to a bigger question. Because it's about layers, like in an onion.
Ding, 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 ding. Let's ring the bell. Let's unlearn that. I believe that's a big takeaway. Can you repeat that for us?
Well, great questions don't lead to answers. They lead to deeper questions.
Whoa. Let's define what's a great question. All right. We have a definition of a great question, right? And questioning. Whenever you're faced with a complex situation, what's your mindset going into complex situations and decision making? How do you frame yourself or get yourself ready to ask the right question? Because somebody might be asking, how do I develop that?
All right. Jamie, you ask about how do you frame yourself to ask the right questions? When you're in a complex situation, you have to see the situation as multiples of situations and not as one situation. But the challenge is to try to wrap your mind around a complex situation, ask a question that you think is going to lead to an answer. But you have to see it as a multiple of components. So it's about like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
So you have to look at the elephant and you find a place to start, and you have to take mouthfuls. And that's what a great question do. You bite a piece, it leads you to more pieces. You bite a piece, it leads you to more pieces. And you have to see it in layers and to be patient enough to go through the layers. And then while you go through the questioning, maybe you start to unravel some patterns. But the patterns are also in layers. Then you break it down, like how do you write a computer program? You have to use codes. And you have to be logical. You have to go through the codes one step at a time. But the difference now, the complex situation, they're not linear. So you don't go through to ask a question going to lead to what next along the way. You have to ask questions that leave you in a position that you have to pivot sometimes. When you reach 9 questions, maybe all the first 8 don't make any sense. Are we prepared to see that?
So the story, Albert Einstein was giving a lecture. I think it was Harvard University. It's a true story. And he, at the end of the lecture, end of the year, he was giving the exam to the students, right? And then he made the paper for the exam and gave it to the students. So the students, his assistant asked, Albert, Dr. Einstein, is this the right question? Isn't this the same question you gave the students at the beginning of the course? You gave the students and you gave them the answer. Maybe you want to change this question. Albert looked across and said, you're correct. It's the same question I gave the students at the beginning of the year. But what's different is that the answer has changed. No,
That's
the only
correct.
constant should be changed. That's one of our motto. That's one of the themes here. The only constant should be changed. No, taking small bits, mouthful at a time, wrapping your mind around the complexity and the different elements of that complex situation or multiple situations. But at times we need to make decisions, right? Now, how do you think about making a decision, but understanding that it's the best decision now, but tomorrow it might not be the best decision? How do you condition your mind to be able to do that?
Yes, and Jamie, this is part of the whole perspective, the approach. Because we like the situation as humans, the known. We like to hold on to what we are sure of. But life, as we said, is not linear. It's complex. So it's about how to shift. You have to pivot your questions. It's not about the answers, but it's of how you navigate using questions and not answers. Because we walk life looking for the right answers. But when we can ask different questions, that also move us from being disappointed and disillusioned by failure. Because you assess failure based on answers and not questions. So, because failure is a part of success. When you shift from looking for answers, but asking deeper questions.
Wow, managing failure within a team, right? Making it a question instead of searching for answers. Because you're not really disappointed by a question. Most times disappointment comes because we are looking for an answer. Wow, well said. Well said. No, this is really getting deep. We're really looking into how to really position the mind, how to think, how to make a decision. When you make a decision and you decide with your team, we are going to go down this road. When do you stop and to say enough, we need to pivot? What are some of the factors that you look for? Some of the signs?
Well, it goes back to what we have been saying, Jamie, in actually looking for non-customers, is we're going down the road, not looking for answers, but asking questions. And every time you ask a question, it leaves you in a position to pivot. Every time you look for an answer, you want to hold on to where you start because the answer is on a linear track. So as long as we're asking the questions and we go down the road, expecting that we don't know what to expect, but we are open for the ride.
Expect that we don't know what to expect.
Yes.
I think this is key. Ask questions, but be careful not to keep questioning your decisions.
That's correct.
It's important. Sometimes you have to boil down and make a decision, right?
Yes.
Keep asking questions, but let's not make it personal to be asking or questioning your decision all the time, because then you really never get anywhere. So there's a difference between the mindset of constantly revisiting and asking questions than questioning your decisions.
Yes.
Now, let's come back to non-customers.
Yeah.
No, I think that's very interesting, by the way. What an interesting rabbit hole we just went down. Because we are trying to understand how to think, not what to think.
Yes.
If, let's say you have a team, right? Non-customers. How do you train that team to sort of find the non-customers, that third tier non-customers? What are some of the processes that you want the team to go through?
Well, the first thing, Jamie, is that to give them to make them over from being a non-customer to becoming a customer, you cannot find them along the pathway as long as you're asking the what question. We have to ask the how question. The what question usually lead to an answer because we want to make it multiple choice. But it is the how question that leads us, because the how question does not come from us. You depend more on the other person or element that you're dealing with. You ask how, but you take it away from an expectation that you open your mind to explore deeper avenues. But when you ask the what question, you're expecting an answer. When you don't get that answer, you're disappointed.
Right. Understood.
So to understand what they want, it lies in the realm of how and not what. So to really dig deep into your unexplored customers, you can't go with a prescribed offering and expect to get how. When you go with a prescribed offering that I'm selling you beer, and this is the beer, and asking you what do you want with it. But when I ask you how, it may means when I finish, I no longer have beer. I may have beer with orange juice, whatever you call it. Because I am listening to you.
That's a new one. That's a new one. I think that's an excellent, wonderful example. Most businesses are afraid of that what question.
Yes.
Because that will mean that maybe it is the person asking the question will become irrelevant.
Yes.
Incentives. Agency cost is too high. What do I mean by that? If I am making beer and I'm on the production line and my friend is in marketing who's doing the marketing and we're all a team gelling together and we make the best beer. Now, why would I ask what to the customer when the customer might say, might come back to us and say to us, we don't want beer, we want beer, we want a mixture of beer with orange juice. That would mean that my skill, all the energy and effort, commitment and consistency bias that we have placed into making beer and defining the beer and our product will need to change. I might come redundant.
Yes.
So there's a lot of factors going into why people are sometimes afraid of that what question. Because people might come redundant. The time and skill, my skill, my energy, my effort might become useless. The incentive, my bonus, what I'm gaining from this might need to shift. I might lose it. And people are afraid of that what question. Very interesting. Very interesting point. It's the what customer, not the what question, not that how. Now, let's ask the question who. Who are the ones we should tackle first? First tier, second, or third tier? Where should we go first in terms of our non-customers?
Well, and it goes back to the point, Jamie. Our non-customers, we have to go in reverse. Firstly, what does the customer want? They want value. So, but maybe we're not improving the value, but we're looking for different customers. So when we spend more time to understand what better value they're looking for and create that value, then we can grow the business. But many times we use the sales concept. I am making shoes, and because I wear size 13, I'm going to make a size 13 shoes. And I meet a man who is 5'3" and he wears size 5. But I'm trying to convince him that the size 13 shoes would look very good on him.
Yeah, we try to sell him.
Well, I'd find out what the man's need. If I spend enough time, I'd find that the man need a shoe. That's not really a foot. A foot is 12 inches, but maybe he needs 5 inches.
Right.
So,
interesting. Very interesting. So, and this question, I have a question. If I am starting out and I'm a startup, should I spend where should I spend most of my time? On the product or with my non-customers?
And I would say strongly with your non-customers. Because we spend the time with the customers. Because, as you said, we don't want to hear why they don't want our service. The non-customers have the greatest story to tell us. They will tell us.
Yeah, but the common knowledge though has been make a great product and it will sell itself.
And I would say it's not about sales. It's about value. Because when you create something that somebody realize they get more value than what they expect from a product, you now don't get a customer, but you get a fan. Somebody who have signed up with you because you're getting more. It's about value. What am I getting from you? Not what you define as what you're giving to me, but what is it that I want? I want a TV. And you sell me a TV that have 500 buttons on the remote. Maybe I only want 3. So maybe the 497 other buttons are adding to cost, but not to value. And this is the approach it takes. How can we look at what the customer's needs are versus what I am offering? Because many times I am presenting something to the customer, not what the customer needs, but based on what the competition is asking.
Right.
So shift taking our examples and our reference from the competition, and let's put it to the non-customer, not even the customer, but non-customer. And that's where we can grow our market. The real growth of our market does not lie with our customers, it lies with our non-customer.
Excellent. I think that's a great point for us to summarize. For us to really go to our non-customers, we must be able to find the value within ourselves, within our teams, within our mindset, within our processes, and within our product. We are limited to our customers if we cannot properly and carefully identify the value. A lot of us, and a lot of the times, we are focused on our product and our customers because we ourselves cannot identify the value within our product. Lift the value and take it to the non-customers. The concept of the non-customer, that's where the change is. That is blue ocean. That's where you want to go. That's where you want to lead your team and your business. It will be better for you and it will be better for your industry. What a place to end this, Dr. Pinnock. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for being with us. Here on the Unlearn Show, we hope that you have created a new memory. Final word, Dr. Pinnock.
Well, the final word is start at the end, not at the beginning. In other words, begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And the end has to be value for your non-customers. Don't look at what's happening now, where the best things are. Look at where things can become better and greater for others not being served. Thank you.
Well said. Wonderful. Thank you, sir.